Welcome back, everybody, to We Are TPM with myself, Kyle Teixeira. Sitting across from me, it's John Teixeira. Hello. This week we are back to talk about, does recession equal housing bust? Now, if you are interested in this topic or anything else we talk about, or just want to talk to our smiling faces over a phone where you won't see us, give us a call at 817-818-9039. Shoot us an email at showmethemoney at wearetpm.com. Now, let's get into it. Does recession equal housing bust?
So I almost hate this topic, right? Because I'm an optimist and I hate talking about negative things. But we have to talk about it because we need to be constantly educating our clients, our friends and family, the people that we talk to. We need to make sure people have a really good understanding of where we're going and understand at least the current climate that we're in without listening to all the news headlines, right? Mm-hmm. And sometimes I have to say the news headlines, they don't intend to be what's the word I'm looking for? To deceive us or to derail our thinking, right? But it does.
I completely disagree with that.
Well,
I think they totally intend
sometimes
to
they do
deceive
intend to
and steer your thinking. But
okay, you read into my comment was sometimes there's a benign title like, "Do we have a housing bust?" Right? And that leads people to think we got a housing bust coming just because they read that headline.
Yeah, and I guess we want to talk about the correlation and the non-correlation, right, between these two things. Because people think recession, and they jump to 08, right? They're like, oh, recession 08. Housing busted in 08. It crashed in 08. And they're all the same thing when they're, fundamentally different. The causes and effects of both are completely different. So
I was raising a family during the recession previous to 08 in 1999 and 2000. We call that the internet bust. What did we call that? It's not what we called it. Darn it. Lost it.
The tech bubble of 2000?
Tech bubble. There you go. Thank you.
Or that's the dot-com bubble.
Dot-com bubble. That's what we called it. That's what we called it.
We're not talking about the dot-com bubble. We are going to talk about the housing bust, I guess, right?
But no, the dot-com bubble was a pretty good recession, and that's a good example of what I think is coming right now. We probably have, and we're going to back up and define this, right? But we probably have a very similar type of recession coming in terms of the housing market, because my home right during and after the dot-com bubble increased in value more than twofold. The one I owned at that time.
Well, and let's talk about we're the correlation between the two is vastly different. We're in a lot more very similar economic conditions now.
Which two? I think we're confusing people. Which two are we talking about now?
Well, the housing bubble and a recession, right?
Oh, got it.
They're
Back on track.
Separate. But the economic conditions of the dot-com bubble are way more similar than the economic conditions of the 08 crash.
That's
what you were trying to say.
That's what I'm saying,
and
yes.
That is completely true. So,
yes.
And as we go into this, I want to specify that we are not financial advisors. This is not financial advice, and everything we discuss on this is based solely on our opinions and experience. But the reason we say that is because the tech bubble or dot-com bubble of 2000 was way more of a financial instability in the financial system, where 08 was tied to the financial system, but the foundation of that whole crash was in the housing market, in the financial piece of the housing market, where right now the financial pieces of the housing market are very strong. To put it in a very general sense, and the financial system, stock market, and all that stuff is very similar to where it was in .com or in 2000.
So economies typically are, how people feel about an economy is based on what is happening with their wealth, right? Mm-hmm. And so some people have their wealth wrapped up in real estate. So when real estate goes up and down, that affects how they feel about their wealth and which then drives how they spend money, right? Some people have their wealth tied up in the stock market, which is a completely different ball of game, right? Did I just mix up two metaphors? That's pretty good. I love it.
I think you're talking about a ball of meat when you say it that way.
No, I think I was going with ball of wax and a different game. I don't have no idea what that was.
Different ball game. Different ball game. You were trying to say.
Let's do that. Let's go with that. So, but anyways, so that's a different experience. So if all your money is in the stock market and that does go, as that goes up and down, that also affects how you feel right now about your wealth. That's kind of a psychological truth about our economy. But, you know, if you just got laid off and unemployment is at really high levels, then that is the thing that would make you feel whether the economy is good or bad, right? I just made that scenario up, but clearly that's not what's happening right now. But so those people that are off getting new jobs at higher rates, maybe they feel great about the economy right now because they're not in the stock market and they've owned a home since, 2010 and they're doing great.
Well, and yeah, there's a lot of different pieces of our current economy. Like you said earlier, there's a lot of deception, in my opinion, going on because you're hearing very conflicting things about our economy. You got, people like our president coming out and saying people's savings have never been better, right? Their savings have never been better. Americans have never been more financially stable, and you can't help but laugh at that. Well, there's also a headline from, from the White House.
His own supporters can't help but laugh at that.
Well, we're not talking about that specifically, but the point is you're hearing complete opposites. Like our economy's never been better, but we're heading for a recession, and people have more money than ever, but they can't spend it, and their debt's high, and like, what does that even mean?
Well, let's back up, Kyle. Yeah. Our topic basically wraps around does a recession equal housing bust?
No. So
define a recession for us.
And our answer, let's be clear, our answer is no, because they're not directly correlated. So like you said, let's define a recession. Recession, in general terms, is a decline year over year in the economy or quarter over quarter. So generally based on gross domestic product. So you take the gross domestic product at the beginning of the year and a quarter later it's down, next quarter it's down. Economics would define that as a recession because it's receding. Now it doesn't mean the entire economy is receding. It could mean pieces of it are while other pieces are going up. So you said during .com bubble recession that your housing value went up. Well, we can talk about how, that was a stock market factor, right? The bubble that burst was in the stock market, in the tech stocks, in the .com stocks. Well, a crash isn't just like something that occurs, right? In technical terms, there's a lot of money being pulled out of something, right? There was a lot of money being sold off during the .com bubble, right? Wealth doesn't just sit in fiat currency or cash. It generally moves somewhere else, right? And a lot of times when it moves from something speculative and risky like tech stocks, it gets moved back into something conservative where, real estate falls into the stable piece of it. So
right, and that that kind of blends to another topic that we probably will address in the future. About the amount of corporate rentals, at least here in Tarrant County, is interesting, right? So that's your point is, okay, stock market's getting risky. Let's pick up and move right to a different sector of the economic system, so to speak. Sector
rotations.
You defined a recession as having 2 quarters where our GDP is down. I didn't hear anything about houses in there. The gross domestic product, does a house, this is a good question, does housing, is it at all included in the gross domestic product?
Yes. Don't ask me to explain how.
Well, no, yes. It's easy. The answer is really easy. Every new house that's built and sold should become part of our gross domestic product.
Correct.
The resale of that house later on is not included in those numbers, but it's a new product that was just built and sold on the market that should be part of our gross domestic product. I'm not an economist, so whether
part of the equation, yes.
Whether it actually is or not, I'm not going to attest to, but it definitely should be based on my limited understanding of what the gross domestic product is. And I'm sure Steve will Google this and erase this whole part of our podcast if I'm wrong.
This is why I didn't want to specify, because you're right in some ways, wrong in some other ways. But a housing bust. Okay, so let's talk about the big fear. The big fear that I keep getting asked about is, and the reason the recession and housing bust get correlated in people's head is, of course, because of 08. In 08, really 06, 07, 08, whatever you want to call it, or the Great Recession that they now call it, was a recession and a housing bust that occurred in the same time period. And they were tied together at that point in time.
And while the housing bust may not have been the exact origin of the recession, it was the reason for the recession. Mm-hmm. Where most recessions are not caused by housing. Usually housing rises in spite of recessions. As a matter of fact, 4 of the last 6 recessions that we've had since 1980, housing prices have appreciated during that recession.
And during none of those did we have as significant of a supply problem as we have right now.
Yeah, exactly.
And if we get rid of all the macroeconomics that we're currently talking about and think of a massive lack of supply in housing alone causes housing prices to go up.
That's a TikTok right there. You just made a TikTok statement.
Maybe, but
I love it.
The point is that is an economic factor of our micro market, the housing market that we're talking about, that causes prices to go up. So where leading up to 08, or there's a lot different economic.
Everything was different.
Yes.
The entire environment regarding housing was completely different than it is right now.
Especially because when the price problem of the housing crash it was the opposite. It was oversupply, huge oversupply with no demand because of a lot of factors.
Well, yes, demand dropped very quickly.
It did drop very quickly. Well, and that's the fear right now.
Everybody stopped buying 5 rental properties when they had no business owning any rental properties.
Well, that's the fear right now, is that what you just described, the extreme drop in demand, is what's scaring people, because there has been a pretty extreme drop in demand for housing over the last 3 months.
It absolutely has. But the reason that there's been a drop in demand is because people are frustrated with the current market, not because they don't want a house. So the demand is still there, and it's getting pent up, and it's going to get more and more pent up as this goes on, because people are on the sidelines. It's not that they don't want it anymore. It's they're waiting on the sidelines.
And affordability.
For better conditions, whatever that is.
With appreciation rates in the last 2 years combined with interest rates going up 3 points in 3 months.
Hey, this will become the new norm. The interest rates will become the new norm eventually. Mm-hmm. The housing prices will become the new norm. $4 a gallon for gas will become the new norm, and we'll stop bitching about it eventually, right? It will all become our new norm, just like it did in the 80s and the 90s when things went through the roof. And then we'll move on through our new normal.
We'll wait 5-10 years, government will do it again, and then they'll blame it on something else, and those are our cycles.
So I guess you don't believe that the recession equals a housing bust.
No, because I think that currently, in our current economic conditions, real estate's one of the safest places to be. And it's because partially we don't have the same factors as 08 at all. We don't have mortgages being sold as crap securities. I'm not going to get into that, but
please don't.
The root cause of the 08 crash is in a healthy condition right now. That's all I'll say on that.
It is healthier. Mortgages and how we back them and that part of our financial system learned a lot of lessons that are still fresh from 08. And while I do believe we'll make those mistakes again.
Oh, they've already been made again. But the percentage of homes in the U.S. that are owned by institutional investors and basically the wealth of our country is way higher than it was back then.
Yes,
and
sir.
the wealth of our country does not allow that, does not allow the market that all their money is in to decline. So if you want the simplest answer you can get is all the rich people are protecting the value of real estate, then, you know, we can say it that way. And then people like that answer.
So everybody's getting out of Tesla and buying a rental property? The smart people?
I wouldn't say that because there's not people. There are life insurance funds and wealth funds and hedge funds and all.
You're right. 51% in Tarrant County, 33%, I believe that 35% across the country are owned by those kinds of investors. So
follow the money.
Yep, that's what the money's doing. The money's leaving the stock market, which is why it's going down, and they're going into real estate.
So why does recession not equal housing bust? Well, in a lot of things we just described, a recession, it will essentially help the housing market because it's a gap, right? It's a gap between affordability. As housing
slow it down.
They slow it down. Housing can continue to go up and become less affordable, and we're talking about 51% in Tarrant County. You know, institutional investors these days want to own all of it. That's the world we're going to. Is big money doesn't want you to own anything. That's just a fact.
Yes, you are right. There is a portion of our population that wants to take away the middle class, and even they may not realize what they're doing when they say that, but they don't want. They would rather institutional investors own everything so that they can control the real estate and control the market. And what makes America great is that we don't allow that to happen, right? So go out and buy yourself a house and do your part to make sure that institutional investors don't own a majority of America like they do Tarrant County.
Yeah, and we're not saying this as like speculative opinions where it may sound that way, like this is what their money is doing. That's just a fact. That's what their money has been doing. It's never been doing it at a higher rate than it has since COVID started, since the pandemic started. Never anywhere close to the rate that they've been buying up real estate in the last 2 years has ever occurred.
But that was also a true statement before COVID. They were also buying at unprecedented rates before COVID. Now it's even more unprecedented, which is your point. But they were already buying at enormous rates before then.
Yeah, and they will continue because the thing that pushes the average person out of being able to compete is interest rates, right? And we've talked a lot about interest rates. These institutional investors don't care about the interest rate because, well, they do care because they're making money on the interest. They're making money off that interest because they're selling these mortgages, but they buy those houses for cash in general terms, which doesn't need an interest rate.
Open Door buys tons of houses and they lose money. My watch just told me they don't understand. Maybe that's a sign that our podcast is no good.
Well, everybody knows Zillow. Everybody loves Zillow for what they do, and just talk to us about Zillow. How'd Zillow do at buying up a whole bunch of real estate?
Yeah, they got smart and said, "Oh, this is not working."
No, they didn't get smart. They closed that division and lost billions of dollars.
Well, they realized their losses, yes, but they realized that this is not a good business model, and they moved on from it. Open Door is doubling down on it because they've got a bunch of venture capitalists and bunch of people pouring money into their business model, just like we talked about it before. Just like Uber is being propped up and funded by
Yeah, but don't start
Saudi
too
oil.
far off. So, and it may sound like we're jumping to a bunch of different topics, but in reality, these are the points that should give you confidence in the housing market and housing value. Because ignoring all the noise and the things like you said, deceptive headlines and all that stuff, there's certain factors in the economy and in the housing market that cause things to happen. It's not all psychological. It's not like, oh, everyone thinks there's going to be a crash, and now it's going to crash. That's not how it works. A market and a value is what people are willing to pay. And we just told you that the wealthy and all the big money in our country is buying up. They're willing to pay whatever to buy up property.
Yeah, and I hear it all the time. I hear people that are waiting on the sidelines for the bust. They're waiting for it to get better. They're waiting for prices to come down. I hear these statements, and it's hard for me not to roll my eyes because I know in my heart and soul that none of those things are going to happen. What will happen has already kind of happened right now in the present, and that is things will come down to a normal, healthy rate, right? Normal, healthy rate in Texas has always been, I say 3 to 5%. It's really probably more like 3 to 8% in Texas has been a normal appreciation rate in Dallas, Fort Worth, San Antonio, Houston, Austin. We have seen some outrageous numbers.
Well, and we're talking about rate of increase. We're talking about a rate of increase.
Exactly.
That is not.
So it's increasing. So it's going to be
how quickly
more expensive later than it is now.
Yeah. So the housing market going down in what you just described is not increasing as quickly as it was when it was increasing insanely rapidly.
Right.
So and the biggest. This is what I like to tell my friends, actually, especially younger people, when they tell me they're waiting, right? They're always waiting. Everyone's always waiting. And I'm like, are you waiting for a time that your year-over-year wage increases is going to beat the housing market? Because that's never going to happen. Maybe that's too technical. How quickly you make more money is not going to beat how quickly the housing market increases. Like, did your wages went up 5% this year from last year? Okay, well, housing market went up 15%. And then the next year, now your wages went up 1%. Oh, the housing market went up 15%. Now your wages went up 3%. Well, guess what? The housing market went up 15%. So that's compounding appreciation. But the point is, what are you waiting for? Because you're just waiting for it to get more expensive. And even if your wages do keep up, now you're waiting to pay the same amount.
You are absolutely right. So psychologically, the reality is those people that say that, they basically just don't like the current conditions. There's something about the current conditions they don't like, and they're not willing to suck it up and conform to whatever they're currently dealing with, right? So they're going to wait for it to be better. Is that right? Is that kind of the mentality of those people? And you and I are saying it's not going to get better than it is now. So you should suck it up and change your mindset and do it now, because it will be worse later. The things that make you feel. That's kind of what we're
saying, but you're also strategizing in a game you're not playing. To keep it really simple, I mean, you're making a game plan for a game you're not in.
Another TikTok moment, Steve.
But it is. I mean, the people who are waiting, that makes some sense. That it makes some sense today to be waiting are the people who are waiting to move up. They're waiting. Say they bought their house, within the last year or two at extremely low interest rates, and they're waiting for interest rates to see what happens with interest rates, because they're going to be moving up to a house that's bigger or whatever, what they want, more desirable, whatever it may be, and probably paying more or the same amount. Or no, not the same amount. They're paying more, a lot more.
Mm-hmm.
So even if they were to move into just they're moving across town into the exact house, same price, everything, they're now paying more for directly comparable house. Mm-hmm. So those people waiting make some sense. They're waiting but they're in the game already.
Yeah.
They're waiting to play a better hand.
Mm-hmm.
They're folding their hand and waiting for pocket aces. But
yep. So recession doesn't equal housing bubble. Go do it.
Doesn't equal housing bust.
Doesn't equal a housing bust. There is no such thing as a housing bubble in our opinion right now.
And what caused 08 was the recession of 08 was caused by a housing bust. A housing bust caused the recession. It wasn't a recession causing a housing bust. And that's like what I've tried to clarify for a while now. Is one can cause the other, but one doesn't cause. Recession does not equal housing bust.
Well, and here let's finish with this. If 2008 is the worst case scenario, and I believe aside from the depression of the 1920s, aside from that, I believe that 2008 was our worst economic downturn and our worst housing crash that we've had since that time, I believe, given most numbers. So if that's the case, it only took us 2.5 hours to completely forget that happened.
Years.
2.5 years.
And what he's saying is at the tip of the housing bubble in 08, if you bought at the tip of it, right, for your housing value to recover, took till 2011. If you still own that house today, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but it's at least doubled, if not quadrupled in value since then. So depending on where he is, of course.
We manage homes for people that wanted to sell during that time.
Oh, we do.
Their home was underwater. And we said, don't sell your home. Don't sell your home for... I had people coming to the closing table with cash between 2008 and 2010. It's
paying
insane.
To get out of their home.
Paying to get out of their house. Don't get rid of your house. Hang on to it. Lease it out. You'll be glad you did. And that only took 2.5 years.
And a lot of those people, like our oldest management clients that were, and by underwater, this means that, they owe, say, $100,000 on it, and now it's only worth $90,000, right? So to get out of it, they needed to pay $10,000 to the lender,
exactly.
Right? Those people, a lot of them waited and just sold like this year, last year, and
walked away with
blew
a ton
our
of money.
mind. And like, have they ever thanked you? Have you ever got more of a thankful?
Oh yes.
This could have ruined our lives. And instead, we're walking out of here with tens of thousands of dollars.
Yeah.
So 6 figures in some cases.
I'm helping somebody who bought a condo for I think it was $86,000 during that time. He bought a condo while everyone else was running for the fence, running for the hills. He went and bought a condo, and he's closing on it next month for $200,000. Isn't that crazy?
It is crazy. I mean,
how do you build wealth like that while you're living in your house? That you're going to pay rent somewhere anyways. You might as well pay yourself rent and go build yourself a bunch of wealth.
And if you think that wasn't a huge testament to all money around the world, it was. I mean, the worst possible conditions for the housing market to hit. All right, we're just let's test the water. Let's stand on the sidelines and see. Okay. All right, 2.5 years and that completely recovered? Okay, so now they're looking for any downturn in the housing market to buy stuff up.
And this goes back to your statement that you're not even playing the game. You're looking for your next hand while you're not even in the game, right? Mm-hmm. So it seems natural economics. You hear buy low, sell high, right? That's true, and that's true in stocks. That's true when you're a venture capitalist. That's true, in a lot of facets economically, right? And your and I viewpoint has always been kind of what you said. Get in the game before you make those decisions, right? Because if you're trying to time the market, then you're never going to start building wealth for yourself. The market's always going to go up. And if there's a small blip, even if it's as bad as 2008, that's still a small blip. Go ahead and look at a timeline of the last 20 years, and you'll see 2008 just go, bloop, just a little tiny bloop, and then it crashing upwards, right? Mm-hmm. Like, that's the worst it gets. What are you waiting for? Get your money in real estate and out of the stock market. Stock market's a gamble.
Well, I mean, it's all investing, right? It's risk management. So, but again, the best risk management is what you need to do to invest. But
hey, tell me this. Tell me I'm wrong about this. Everybody who pours money into the stock market feels extremely smart while it's going up, and they feel like correct. They feel like they are the smartest people on the planet, and they feel wealthy, and they feel like they're going to do this for the rest of their lives. And as soon as it turns around and tanks, they don't feel that way anymore, do they?
No, when the government's printing money into the stock market and
whatever the reasons why, it always happens.
No, for sure.
It always happens. So
that's why they say it's long-term investments. It doesn't always happen.
Real estate typically doesn't do that to you. That's all I'm saying.
Someone tell this guy to go back 20 years and buy Apple.
I'd love to. If I had a time machine, I'd be all about the stock market.
We'd be doing great. All right. So does recession equal housing bubble?
No.
Not equal.
Does not equal
housing bubble because they no correlation.
Doesn't equal a housing bust. Doesn't equal a housing crash. Doesn't equal any of those things.
So, are we looking for a housing bust?
No, I'm not. I'm looking for a slowdown. I'm looking for. We're still going to have a supply and demand problem over the course of the next probably 3 years still, but affordability and everything else has offset that problem and interest rates. So I feel like we're going to come down to some healthy rates and continue with our supply and demand problem, and we just need to continue. Kyle, you and I need to continue to inspire the people around us to get into real estate, to buy real estate, and to hang on to it for as long as they don't need to sell it.
Like what we talked about last week, the investment as investment property too, because as this affordability problem goes up, these interest rates are going up. Institutional investors are buying up rental property, just like we said, and people are getting pushed into the rental market, like we said last week. Rents are going to keep going up, so what you can make off that property is going to keep going up. And get in the game if you want to play.
The next phase, Kyle's going to be assumptions.
You
right,
can't
Steve?
win a
Steve,
game
remember
you
the '80s when we had assumptions? That's what's going to happen again. It's gonna that's going to be the next phase of this whole game. Is we're going to be selling houses with assuming these 2% and 3% and 4% loans, because we're at normal 7% and 8%, and nobody wants to sell those houses.
Oh, good old this. It's funny, different markets you can operate in, isn't it?
It is. It's all different.
People think it doesn't change.
Good discussion, Kyle. I feel like we need to have this almost constantly, right? Not necessarily on this podcast, but I feel like we're constantly having this conversation with people, and it's important.
The only thing constant is change, right? So
that's right. All right,
we'll
close us out.
All right. Well, if you guys have any questions or want to talk about recession not equal to housing bust, give us a call, 817-818-9039. Shoot us an email at showmethemoney@wearetpm.com, or stop by in downtown Mansfield and come talk to us.
Hop in on us like other people do.
Well, thank you guys for checking in, and we are out.
We out. Later.